24-year-old Daricka Moore is accused of killing 6 people, 4 of whom were family members, during a shooting rampage that unfolded across 3 separate homes within the same small community in Clay County, Mississippi. The violence began shortly before 7 p.m. on the 9th of January 2026, when the first 911 call reported gunfire inside a home on David Hill Road in Cedar Bluff, a rural area roughly 125 miles northeast of Jackson. Daricka is accused of killing his father, 67-year-old Glenn Moore, his uncle, 55-year-old Willie Guinness, and his brother, 33-year-old Quentin Moore. Daricka allegedly stole Quentin's F-150 truck and drove several miles to his cousin's home in the same Cedar Bluff area. There he forced his way inside and attempted to sexually assault a 7-year-old girl identified by family members as Michaelia Guinness, his second cousin. Investigators say Daricka fatally shot the child during the attack. The child's mother and 2 other children were inside the home. Authorities said Daricka also placed a gun to the head of another child, believed to be even younger, though the child was not harmed. It remains unclear whether the weapon malfunctioned or the trigger was not pulled. From there, Daricka allegedly drove to a residence on Solomon Griffith Road, where investigators later found his truck hidden behind the house. Inside the residence, authorities discovered the bodies of Barry Bradley and Samuel Bradley. Both men had been shot in the head. One of the brothers served as a pastor of a local church. Daricka was taken into custody at 11:24 p.m, roughly 4.5 hours after the first 911 call. He was arrested at a safety checkpoint, about half a mile from the second crime scene following a multi-agency search. Authorities said he was armed with both a rifle and a handgun at the time. Daricka's been held without bail at the Clay County Jail on first-degree murder charges. His initial court appearance is scheduled for the 12th of January. District Attorney Scott Coalson said the charges could be upgraded to multiple counts of capital murder, noting that the death penalty would have to be considered under Mississippi law. Sheriff Eddie Scott said Daricka had not been previously on law enforcement's radar, and investigators are still searching for a motive. He described the family's grief as overwhelming, saying it was difficult to comprehend the loss of so many relatives in a single night. He added that this case was one of the worst he's ever seen in his 30 years on the force. The investigation continues. A man who worked in a high school kitchen in Highlands Ranch, Colorado, has been arrested on multiple child-related charges. According to the Douglas County Sheriff's Office, deputies received a tip on the 31st of December 2025, alleging that 35-year-old John Michael Beccia Jr. was in possession of child pornography. Detectives launched an investigation, which led to additional evidence and further charges. John was arrested the same day and is now facing allegations of aggravated incest, sexual assault on a child by a person in a position of trust, and sexual exploitation of a child. He was booked into the Douglas County Detention Center and is being held on a $100,000 bond. The Sheriff's Office confirmed that John had been employed by the Douglas County School District's Nutrition Services since November 2025, working as an assistant kitchen manager at Mountain Vista High School. He was first placed on administrative leave and has since been terminated. A man was shot and killed in his own front yard by a stranger walking through the neighborhood. 64-year-old Harold Harper was gardening outside his home at 1031 Southeast 3rd Street in Ocala, Florida, when he was shot in the back of the head shortly after 3:30 p.m. on Wednesday the 7th of January. Harold died at the scene. Just minutes earlier, a nearby resident had called 911 to report a man dressed in all black walking through the neighborhood with a pistol. As the caller was pulling out of his driveway, the man approached his vehicle and motioned for him to stop. The caller kept driving and saw the man appear to rack the slide of the gun. Moments later, a second 911 call reported that Harold had been shot. Officers were already in the area because of an earlier call and arrived quickly. One of the first officers on scene spotted a man matching the description from the initial report, walking on Southeast 11th Avenue, a short distance from Harold's home. He was detained and found to be carrying a pistol. The suspect, 29-year-old Isaac Toye, was arrested and charged with homicide and 2 counts of aggravated assault. He remains held at the Marion County Jail without bond. Investigators say witness statements and physical evidence placed Isaac at both the initial encounter and the shooting. They believe the attack was a random act of violence. Harold's wife had been outside with him shortly before the shooting, but had stepped inside moments earlier. A man and a woman are behind bars after a young boy was rushed to the hospital and found to have been exposed to fentanyl and other opioids. At 11:29 a.m. on the 28th of December 2025, police were called to a home at 1490 Lake Circle in Mapleton, Georgia, where they found the boy unresponsive, blue and not breathing in a recliner in the living room. According to the arrest warrants from the Cobb County Police Department, the adults present were identified as 34-year-old Devan Ansley Adams and 50-year-old James Daniel Coalson, both of Mapleton. Authorities have not released the nature of Devan's or James's relationship to the child. The boy was transported by ambulance to the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta with a rapid police escort. Blood tests later confirmed exposure to fentanyl and opioids, and warrants state that a large amount of Narcan was required to keep him breathing effectively. Investigators searched the residence later that evening and reported finding multiple suspected dangerous drugs, including oxycodone, muscle relaxers and suspected heroin. One bottle of oxycodone was discovered on top of a nightstand within easy reach of the child, while several additional bottles were found in a bedroom and believed to have been accessible prior to his collapse. Devan and James were arrested and charged with second-degree cruelty to children. They were booked into the Cobb County Adult Detention Center, where they remain held without bond. Despite the discovery of suspected drugs throughout the home, no drug-related charges have been filed at this time. A man is behind bars accused of killing his mother inside a nursing home in Radcliffe, Kentucky. At just after 2 p.m. on Friday the 2nd of January 2026, officers responded to a report of a stabbing at the facility called Signature Healthcare at North Hardin on Rogersville Road. When officers arrived, they found 33-year-old John Curtis of Louisville at the scene with blood on his clothing. Investigators say he allegedly stabbed his mother multiple times while visiting her in a room and she died from her injuries. Joseph was taken into custody and later charged with murder domestic violence. He appeared in court on Monday the 5th of January, where a judge entered a not guilty plea on his behalf and set his bond at $500,000. He remains held at the Hardin County Detention Center, with his next court date scheduled for the 12th of January. A 19-year-old Connecticut man has been handed a prison term after shooting his 16-year-old girlfriend in the head during a FaceTime call. On the 5th of January 2026, Jayzon Gunter was sentenced to 20 years in prison suspended after 8 years, followed by 3 years of probation. Jayzon pleaded guilty to first-degree attempted assault causing serious physical injury. Any probation violation could add another 12 years to his sentence. Under the plea agreement, Jayzon admitted to attempted first-degree assault and attempted third-degree strangulation in connection with the shooting. He also pleaded guilty to violating a protective order in a separate case. Several charges, including attempted murder, were dropped. The case began on the 17th of September 2024, shortly after 12:30 a.m., when emergency crews were called to a home on Lenox Street in Hartford, Connecticut. Responders found a 16-year-old girl vomiting blood and moaning in pain. Police were requested after it became clear she had been shot in the head. She was rushed to a local hospital, where she underwent emergency surgery and was listed in a critical but stable condition. At one point, she was placed in a medically induced coma. Investigators learned that the girl had been staying with a friend at the residence when Jayzon, her boyfriend at the time, came to visit. Witnesses, including an adult and a juvenile, reported that the couple argued before Jayzon abruptly left. After the confrontation, the girl's neck appeared red and swollen. The adult witness told the juvenile that Jayzon had wrapped a phone charger around her neck. Minutes after Jayzon left, both witnesses heard a loud noise. The adult believed he had returned about 10 minutes later. The girl was soon found on the floor, mumbling and spitting up blood. A friend who was not at the residence told investigators she had been on FaceTime with the victim at the time of the shooting. She reported hearing a male enter the room, seeing the girl indicate that he had a gun, and then watching him point it at her head. Moments later, she heard a bang and saw the phone drop. At the hospital, the girl reportedly told a nurse that the shooter's name was Jayzon. Roughly 12 hours after the attack, Hartford police located Jayzon at a nearby apartment on King Street and arrested him on an unrelated warrant. During questioning, investigators say he admitted being at the residence and involved in a physical altercation, but claimed he only threw a phone cord at the victim. He also claimed he heard a shot come from the bedroom. Police obtained a warrant charging Jayzon later that same day. He has remained in custody since his arrest. A man has been arrested and charged in connection with the alleged kidnapping and assault of a pregnant woman in Toledo, Ohio. 25-year-old Jamere Jones faces 13 felony charges, including 3 counts of kidnapping, rape, and felonious assault, along with strangulation-related charges and 1 count of domestic violence. According to court documents, Jamere allegedly barricaded the woman inside his Toledo home on the 30th and 31st of December 2025. The victim was 21 weeks pregnant at the time. Over the course of those 2 days, investigators say Jamere raped her multiple times and subjected her to repeated physical assaults. He allegedly beat her with several objects, including a hammer, a belt, and a chain, strangled her to the point of unconsciousness, and poured rubbing alcohol on her while threatening to set her on fire. Police also report that he held a rifle to her chest during the attack. The victim, who has not been identified, was hospitalized, and reports suggest the assault may have caused trauma to her unborn child. Jamere was arrested on Monday the 5th of January 2026, and he's been held in the Lucas County Jail on a $590,000 bond. He's scheduled for a preliminary hearing on the 14th of January. A 19-year-old Indiana man is in custody after allegedly trying to carry out a threat and kill an ex-person his ex-girlfriend dated. But instead of shooting her new boyfriend, prosecutors say he opened fire into her home and killed the boyfriend's brother. The suspect, Antwan Hayes, is charged with murder and burglary with a deadly weapon. Investigators say that after the breakup, Antwan told his ex-girlfriend he would kill anyone she dated. She said she tried to hide a new relationship by leaving her phone at home so he couldn't track her. At around 4 a.m. on the 11th of November 2025, she arrived at her current partner's home on the 3500 block of North Oxford Street in Indianapolis, Indiana. Antwan showed up about 10 minutes later, likely by Uber since he didn't own a car. Surveillance footage allegedly shows Antwan approaching the house with a pistol and an extended magazine. He yelled for the woman to come outside, threatening to kill someone. When he couldn't get inside, he moved to a side window and fired multiple rounds into a guest's bedroom. Inside was 23-year-old Kenneth Anthony Murff Jr., the brother of the woman's boyfriend. Officers found him awake and breathing, but he later died at the hospital. By the time police arrived at 5:20 a.m., Antwan and his ex-girlfriend had already fled in her vehicle. When they reached her home, he left on foot. A warrant was issued on the 17th of November. Antwan surrendered on the 1st of January and was formally booked on the 5th of January 2026. The woman told investigators she never believed he would act on his threats and fled only with him because she felt confused and afraid. A man has been charged in the stabbing death of his mother. At just before 4 p.m. on the 31st of December 2025, Gregg County deputies responded to Jamerson Road in White Oak, Texas, where they found 58-year-old Penny Renee Keys outside her home with multiple stab wounds. She was taken to a Longview hospital and later pronounced dead. Investigators say her family identified her 23-year-old son Zachary Ryan Keys as a suspect. A warrant was issued, and Zachary was later found in Panola County. Deputies took him into custody without incident. He was booked into the Panola County Jail on a murder charge, where he remains held on a $1 million bond. The investigation remains ongoing. A man from Silver, North Carolina has been charged with crimes against a minor. The Hayward County Sheriff's Office said that 20-year-old Nixon Suarez was first charged with felonious restraint on the 19th of December 2025. On the 6th of January 2026, investigators additionally charged him with statutory rape of a child under the age of 15. Nixon remains held at the Hayward County Detention Center with no bond. Sheriff Wilkie said he's proud of the diligent work completed by detectives and emphasized the department's commitment to protecting vulnerable members of the community and holding offenders accountable. A man accused of shooting his girlfriend in the face last year pleaded not guilty to attempted murder during a court appearance on the 2nd of January 2026. At 1:54 p.m. on the 17th of June 2025, emergency dispatchers received a 911 call reporting that someone had been shot inside a residence at 513 Fairbanks Road in Farmington, Maine. The caller said the suspect had fled the home on foot. A short distance south of the residence, deputies located 26-year-old Gunthar Swan and detained him. Inside the home, They found Gunthar's 29-year-old girlfriend with a close-range gunshot wound to the face. Investigators say the shooting followed an argument between the two. Gunthar allegedly fired a handgun at her from close range, then tossed the weapon into the dining room, where the couple's 11-month-old daughter was sitting in a high chair. She was taken by North Star Ambulance to Main Health Franklin Hospital, then airlifted to Main Medical Center in Portland. She was listed in a critical condition. The gunshot shattered her jaw, and surgeons had to sew her tongue back in place. Gunthar was arrested and charged with attempted murder, domestic violence elevated aggravated assault, and domestic violence assault. Police described the incident as an isolated domestic violence altercation. He was indicted by a Franklin County grand jury in November 2025. On the 2nd of January 2026, Gunthar appeared in court and pleaded not guilty to the charges. He remains held at the Franklin County Detention Center on a $500,000 cash bail. If convicted on the charges, he faces up to 30 years in prison. A man accused of having a torture room inside his Midtown Mobile, Alabama home pleaded guilty on the 6th of January 2026 to multiple child sexual abuse charges, while a co-defendant accused of helping him pleaded guilty to aggravated child abuse. 40-year-old Adam James Renk of Mobile had been scheduled to go on trial but instead entered a blind plea, a guilty plea with no sentencing agreement. Adam entered a guilty plea but told the court he was doing so only because it was in his best interest. Adam pleaded guilty to first-degree sodomy, first-degree sexual abuse, and sexual abuse of a child younger than 12. He faces up to life in prison and still has pending charges in Oregon. 43-year-old Natasha D. Still of Irvington pleaded guilty to aggravated child abuse. Prosecutors alleged that Natasha allowed an 11-year-old girl to be restrained inside Adam's home. Judge Wesley Pipe sentenced her to 15 years in prison, suspending all but 1 year, and credited her for time she had already served since her 2024 arrest. She will serve 5 years of supervised probation and is barred from contacting the victim or her family. Judge Pipes denied a request from Adam's attorney to keep him on house arrest until sentencing. Deputies handcuffed Adam in the courtroom and took him into custody immediately. Investigators alleged in 2024 that Adam maintained a torture room inside his Midtown Mobile residence and that he restrained and peddled the child for sexual gratification. The allegations triggered an urgent search led by a U.S. Marshals Service task force. Adam ultimately surrendered in October 2024. Judge Pipe set sentencing for the 11th of February 2026 and directed prosecutors to submit their recommendations 2 weeks beforehand. Defense attorney Jeff Dean declined to comment.